It was supposed to be a normal day in the quiet neighborhood, but what happened next shocked everyone. A young girl, no older than 10, was found tied to a pole under the blazing sun. The person responsible, a police officer, a figure meant to protect and serve. The scene left onlookers stunned and speechless. Why would someone sworn to uphold justice do something so cruel? As whispers spread and tension rose, one man wasn't going to let this slide: the girl's father. A decorated military veteran, he had faced battles before, but nothing prepared him for this. When he arrived, his presence was commanding, his emotions raw, and his determination unshakable. What happened next would change everything. A clash between authority and justice unfolded, leaving everyone questioning what was truly right. Stay tuned to uncover the full story behind this shocking moment of courage and confrontation. The little girl, Emma, had been playing outside earlier that day, her laughter echoing through the neighborhood. She was known for her cheerful spirit, always carrying her favorite stuffed bunny wherever she went. But by the time her father, Jack, arrived, that innocence was replaced with tears and fear. The officer, standing just a few feet away, seemed unbothered by the growing crowd of concerned neighbors. His reasoning? It was discipline. But no one could understand why anyone, let alone a cop, would choose such a drastic and humiliating method. Jack, a man of principle and courage, didn't lose his temper right away. He approached Emma, untying her carefully, trying to comfort her trembling frame. But inside, his fury was building. He looked at the officer, his jaw clenched, his military training urging him to stay calm. The questions swirled. What led to this? And what would Jack do next? As Jack cradled Emma in his arms, her sobs quieted, but the fear in her eyes remained. The officer, whose badge glinted under the afternoon sun, tried to justify his actions. He claimed Emma had wandered too far from home, and that tying her to the pole was a necessary lesson for her safety. But the explanation only deepened Jack's disbelief. He couldn't fathom how anyone could see this as protection. The neighbors whispered among themselves, torn between their respect for law enforcement and the unsettling scene before them. Meanwhile, Emma's mother, Sarah, arrived, her face pale with worry. She immediately rushed to her daughter, demanding answers. The conflict became even more intense as Sarah's voice joined Jack's, questioning the officer's judgment. But as emotions ran high, another layer of tension emerged. Why had this officer singled out Emma? Was there more to the story than anyone realized? The crowd grew larger, their murmurs of disbelief turning into louder questions directed at the officer. Jack, standing tall but visibly tense, took a step forward. His voice was steady but carried a weight of controlled anger as he asked, "What gives you the right to treat my daughter this way?" The officer hesitated, his confident demeanor beginning to crack. He stammered about protocol, authority, and the importance of discipline, but his words felt hollow against the weight of what had happened. Emma clung tightly to her mother, who glared at the officer with a mix of outrage and fear. Jack's military instincts told him to stay composed, but his role as a father pushed him closer to the edge. The neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath, everyone waiting to see what Jack would do next. And just when it seemed the situation couldn't get more tense, another patrol car pulled up, its sirens piercing the silence. The stakes had just been raised. As the second patrol car rolled to a stop, the tension in the air thickened. A senior officer stepped out, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. The crowd shifted nervously, unsure if he was there to back up his colleague or address what everyone could see was a clear misuse of authority. Jack stood firm, his protective instincts heightened as he glanced at Emma, still trembling in Sarah's arms. The senior officer approached the cop who had tied Emma up, speaking to him in a low voice. Their conversation was too quiet to hear, but the younger officer's defensive gestures made it clear he was trying to justify his actions. Then, something unexpected happened. The senior officer turned to Jack. "I need to speak with you privately," he said. Jack hesitated but agreed, leaving Sarah and Emma with the crowd. As they moved away, the officer's tone changed. "This isn't the first complaint about him," he revealed. Jack's stomach dropped. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Emma. It was part of a much larger issue. What would Jack uncover next? And would justice finally prevail? Jack's heart pounded as the senior officer continued, explaining that complaints about the younger officer's behavior had been filed before, but no action had been taken. Jack's mind raced. He realized this wasn't just about holding one person accountable. It was about exposing a system that had allowed such behavior to go unchecked. As they spoke, Jack made it clear he wasn't going to let this slide. "If you knew, why didn't anyone stop him before now?" he asked, his voice filled with frustration. The senior officer hesitated, his silence speaking volumes. Meanwhile, back with the crowd, Sarah noticed Emma staring at the officer's belt, her small voice breaking the tension. "He took my bunny," she whispered. Sarah froze. The officer had taken Emma's comfort item, the one thing that gave her security. The crowd overheard and erupted, their disbelief turning to anger. The senior officer, hearing the commotion, walked back with Jack. Realizing the situation was spiraling, he ordered the younger officer to return Emma's bunny and removed him from duty on the spot. It seemed like a victory, but as Jack comforted his daughter, the senior officer leaned in and said quietly, "This goes deeper than you know." Jack's relief was short-lived. There was more to uncover, and this was only the beginning. As the officer drove away, Emma's bunny was finally returned to her small hands. The sight of her clutching it tightly brought a wave of emotion over Jack and Sarah. They had stood up for their daughter, but the fight didn't end here. Jack knew the senior officer's words hinted at something much larger, something that needed to be addressed to protect others like Emma. In the days that followed, Jack filed an official complaint and began connecting with others who had raised concerns about the officer. It wasn't easy, but his military training had taught him that real change often starts with a single act of courage. For Emma, life slowly returned to normal. The community rallied around her, reminding everyone that standing together can bring about justice. As Jack looked at his daughter playing in the yard again, he knew one thing for sure: he'd always fight to keep her safe.